Assalamu alaikum dear students, welcome back. In last two lectures, we have taken an example of learning management system. Then we designed REST API using REST principles, and then we implemented it using Express.js framework. There was one point that was missing, and that was its security. So this lecture and upcoming lecture will be focused on implementing security in REST. So let's see the roadmap of today's lecture. Today, what we will see the security basics. We will see what are CORS, how to implement the CORS. Then we will see how to handle DDoS and DOS attacks. Then we will see XSS cross-site scripts, how to handle it. Then we will see the basic authentication in our this Express framework, and then we will see the session management on the client side and on server side. So this will be our roadmap. First, what are the security measures that needs to be done when we are implementing our REST API? First of that is access to the REST API. Who can access the REST API? For that, we have a CORS option. We can set the CORS, and according to that, we can provide the access to our end application and user applications. Same, we can set DDoS. We can set our middleware for DDoS attacks. We can set our middleware for cross-site scripts, and what other things we can do? We can provide the authentications. Either it is a basic authentication or third-party authentication or any other mechanism. And the last point, what we need to do is to encrypt our password or hash our password. So these are all points which we will do one by one. Some of these points we will do it today. Some of them will be in our next lecture. First, what is a core? Core is cross-origin resource sharing. By default, as you know, REST API is implemented on a separate server. So whenever the request came from the same server, like domain a.com, and this is also on domain a.com, this is same origin request, so it will be the resource will be provided. When it will request the resources from domain B, that is called a cross origin request. In this case, CORS will handle either it will provide the result to our application or not. So for a REST API, we have to define the CORS for the users who are not hosted on our server. We have to provide them some information, some way to get information. It allows servers to specify not just we can access its assets, but also how the assets can be accessed. Like most servers will allow GET requests. They will provide all access informations. For example, list of employees, a list of receipts, list of orders. So these are all GET requests. So mostly servers provide this GET request without any CORS definition. While for the method that are very important, which can change the state of our database, just like patch, put, delete, post, we have to define either the application which is accessing us can do this operations or not. So HTTP request methods like patch, put, or delete, however, may be denied to prevent malicious behavior from the source which is not defined to get access to our DB to update our DB. So the core is the major work we can do. What is the process of the core? If a request comes into the system, if it is head or get, it will go directly and will access, and it will check the options and provide the response. If it is not get, it is post or delete, or so it will check further and check the options. Option will tell that either the request has to be responded or not. So accordingly we can provide either with the error or with the actual data which we need to, which needs to be provided to the end user or end user application. So this is the process of course. Normally what type of headers we receive and what type of headers we provide. Normally a client side application can provide these three things: the origin of the request, which is by default with that application, the access control method, and the headers if that request has some sort of headers. These are the three things which has been included by the end user to our server when that end user application will forward the request. On the other end, what we can see, what we can set the allow origins, we can set the credentials type, we can set the headers, message, methods, and headers. These are all options which we can set. How we can set? Just like this. This is a standard middleware which we can create at our in our application and use it. In this middleware, what we did, set permissions, request, response, and next. Our response.set header allow control allow methods. Static means we are allowing all the methods. We can specify any method if we want to allow a specific method. Origin, same, I am allowing the request from any origin. We can set it by giving the IP www.google.com, www.abc.com, or directly the IP 127.0.0.1. Both have the same meaning. Then we can set the headers, either authentication header is accepted, or content type header is accepted, or what sort of headers we are allowing. Same, we can set the credentials, or we can set the static. Either we can set this or we can set the static. Any type of header is allowed. Same, is there any username password authentication allowed? Yes, true is the yes. So we can set our own middleware and we can use it in our app.js using app.use set permissions. We are calling this function. The other way is we can use the CORS middleware. The process to include that CORS middleware in our system is very simple. We have to install that CORS, that is npm install CORS. After installing the CORS, what we will do, we will go to app.js and we will require this CORS module. And after starting the app, what we will do, app.use CORS, it will start with a default configuration. You can provide the configuration in this brackets, in these brackets. Either if you want to provide specific information, you can set the headers here, else by default permissions will be set using app.use. That is all what is required to implement your CORS into your REST API. Next point is to avoid your system from any DOS or DDoS attack, denial of service attack. What is denial of service attack? It is basically overloading your server by multiplying or systematic requests. So what you can do, you can use a middleware, that is express rate limit, which can define home rate limit, max request per IP to your server, and then uh, delaying full speed or delaying. You can provide even multiple if else in this. If you go through this rate express rate limit, you can see that how this limit can be implemented. Just in case of Google search API, it provides you 100 accesses in a day, 100 requests in a day, and the method to implement it is very simple. Simply write this code in your application and it will provide 100 request per day to your REST API. So this is the way out. This will stop any DOS denial of service attack, because any IP after that handle request will not be able to access your server. It will be responded with an error. Then cross-site script, again, what you need to do is to just install a middleware, that is npm install helmet, and you have to use that helmet. It will automatically implement number of it will implement a shield, web shield, against number of web issues which arises over time. So it is very simple. Simply again you will install it, you will require it in your app.js, and you will use app.use helmet. That's all. So cross-site scripts will be blocked. Then the next thing is our authentication. In authentication, uh, how do we know which user sent request? Would like to authenticate user and have that information available each time we process a request onward. So there are two parts, mainly two parts. One is this authentication part, sorry, and second is the availability of information throughout the application. Whenever the request will come again, it will recheck that information. So these are two parts. First authenticate part can be done using the basic authentication, which we will see next. Then we can use, instead of basic authentication, we can use the passport middleware for the with the local authentication mechanism, the local authentication strategy. Then, or we can use third party authentication, that is also using passport. So this passport and third party authentication will be done in next lecture. For the availability of the information, that is our second part. What we have, we can do it using sessions, or we can replace these sessions with tokens. Token is totally statelessness. So preferred way is to use tokens, and the most popular is JSON web token. So we will study it also. That after passport lecture we will go to JWT tokens. So this is what we need to authenticate and maintain information in our system. So authentication, verifying a user's identity. Weakest link in an authenticated application is the user password, a whole research field in itself. So that is basically the major bottleneck. Application based decisions: does the app need authentication? Are cookie sessions enough, or we need to do something else? If authentication is needed, should third-party applications or authentication mechanism should be used, or no, not, or we use our own mechanism to authenticate the user? So these are all the design decisions. It's up to us. What is basic SS authentication mechanism? That is verifying a user with username and password. If that matches, the server will request will provide the response against the request. If that doesn't match, it will not it will return as a false. It will not return the value. So whenever server requests to a server, it asks for any authentication. If the authentication is not there, it will it will respond as unauthorized access. And then if the client will provide the authentication, the server will respond with the resource which is needed by the client. Here authorization header is important. This is default authorization header. The authorization header is constructed as follows. Username and password are combined into a string, username colon password. The resulting string literal is then encoded using base 64, the authorization method, and a space, that is basic, is then put before the encoding string. Whenever you will request with the authorization header from a client application, it will encode your username and password and will send that to the server. The string will look like this: basic space and the string. Actually the string is username colon password. which has been hashed with the authorization header. If we see how this will be implemented in our server, we need the basic authentication. Whenever the request will come to the auth, every request app.use will be applied on every request. Whenever the request will come, it will see the headers and authorization. Find that if there is no authorization in the header, that means the user has not provided username and password. So we will respond back with error, you are not authenticated, please provide your credentials. So it will forward to it will call next. Else the user has provided the authorization, provided the information, then what we will do, we will split that base 64 encryption string and take out the username. That will be the first part. Auth0 will be username from this string, and auth1, that will be, we are splitting two times from this to this, so on the basis of our column. So here auth0 will contain the username and auth1 will contain the password. And if user is equal to admin, this the user has provided the admin and password, we can access this information from the database. We can see, we can directly hard code this also. So this is just to display you. So if this matches, we will call the next. This middleware will pass on. Else, if the username and password is wrong, it will say again, you are not authenticated. So this is the basic authentication that can be done on our REST API. In this, what we are doing, every request will be checked against authorization header. If the authorization header is provided, we can move forward to check if the authorization header has the relevant information. We will extract that information and matches with our database or hard-coded information. If that match, authorization will be provided and the request will continue to perform its task. Else the response will be an error. So this is the basic authentication mechanism. For this, with the courtesy of Jogesh K. Mapala, Hong Kong, that is a professional from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, I will provide you a video link. In that video link, he has performed a hands-on with the concept of basic authentication. You can follow that information, follow that exercise, and you can implement that exercise on the REST API which we have designed, that is LMS. Okay, so this was the first part of our lecture where we have discussed the basic authentication and the CORS. What we have discussed, the CORS, DDoS, DOS attacks, cross-site scripts, and then the basic authentication in first part. Now after this break we will start the second part also.